Hello, ghosties. You're listening to Not My Ghost,
Not My Problem. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Jen.
Whether you're a skeptic, a true believer, or somewhere in between, join us for a journey into the unknown.
Because remember, when it comes to the paranormal, it may not be our problem,
but it's certainly someone's problem. Jen, I have a special treat for you this episode.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
I have been sneezing and coughing all day, so you're going to have lots of sniffles and coughs and sneezes to edit out of this episode. Aren't you excited?
I am so excited because I'm also going to have a lot of dog noises to edit out of this episode because I am at my aunt's house dog sitting, and I currently have 2 dogs surrounding me that are making noises.
Would you like me to go grab the cats?
No. The last time she had her cat on an episode, the cat was rubbing against the microphone. She claimed it was only for like 5 minutes, but I'm telling you, I think it was the whole episode.
It wasn't even 5 minutes.
There was so much editing I had to do in this episode.
I think my audio just sucked that day for whatever other reason. But there was a point where he started.
I think your audio always sucks.
Well, you know, I have gotten a new router that we spent $400 on, and we have had the cable people come out, and they found several issues with our connection, and the tech corrected those issues and said you should be good to go. And then he left, and by that night we were like, we're not good to go. We're having the same damn problems.
Your demons were not exercised.
They were not.
No.
By the way, this is our scripted, unscripted banter.
It is. Did I mention, I just want to throw out there how much I despise editing audio.
A few times, yes. You've mentioned that to me a few times.
I know. I don't know if I've mentioned it to our ghosties, though.
Oh, well, ghosties, you would not believe what Jen has to go through to edit these episodes. Then she sends me the episode, and all I have to do is listen to it and then go, it's good to go, and give her a thumbs up.
Yeah. She's got the easy part.
Right. The reason it is this way is because I am a dinosaur, and it would take her so long to teach me how to edit the episodes. It's not even worth it.
No, it's not.
Nope.
Yeah. But I absolutely hate it. It's the worst thing. So if anybody out there has edited any audio, you know how much it sucks and how awful it is.
Right.
What makes it even worse is the delayedness that we have between us, because Kelly's internet sucks, as we have stated many times. She does not have her demons exercised. And it's really challenging when we get off and then we overtalk, and then you have to move the audio. It's a whole rigmarole. And I just don't love it.
Yeah.
But I love everything else about the podcast.
Well, if everybody listening would go to our Patreon page and become a patron, maybe, and also get 100 of your friends to listen to the podcast and also become each patron, find 100 friends to listen and become patrons. We might be able to hire an editor.
Maybe. That's funny. 2 Girls, One Ghost podcast, which I know we've mentioned on here before. They always joke that they call their podcast a pyramid scheme, because they always say, tell 3 of your friends to go listen to our podcast, and then have them tell 3 of their friends, and they tell 3 of their friends, and then eventually everybody's listening.
Right. But see, it's better because you don't lose all your money and you don't lose all your friends this way.
True. I would be, if someone wants to message me on Facebook that I haven't talked to since high school and tell me about a really cool podcast that they're listening to and just recommend me to go listen to it, I wouldn't ignore them. I'd be like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for the recommendation. I'll check it out.
Correct.
Yeah. But when you message me on Facebook and I haven't talked to you in 15 years and you're asking me about joining your pampered chef party or whatever the hell else people are selling nowadays, I'm going to ignore you because I'm not interested.
This was a couple years ago, so I was probably out of high school for about 30 years at this time. I had lost a lot of weight and I started to gain some of it back. And somebody I went to high school with messaged me and said, I noticed that you're struggling to keep the weight off, and then tried to pitch me Plexus.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't have words, which doesn't happen very often, Kelly.
I had words. I had lots of them for her.
Oh, I would have had lots of them before her too. I just don't have them in this moment because the audacity of that bitch.
It was pretty terrible. And it made me feel absolutely, I already felt bad about myself that I was starting to gain some of the weight back. And she made me feel so much worse.
Well, Kelly, guess what?
What?
You are gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I think you are gorgeous no matter how much you weigh. Because you are a beautiful person and emit beautiful energy.
Oh, thank you. This is getting a little deep.
Sorry. I love my bestie. What can I say? And the reason why I am going so much into this is because I was not well prepared for our scripted, unscripted banter section. And I did not prepare a question for Kelly. But I think we talked enough about other things and pyramid schemes.
That's not right. That's a cop-out.
Damn it.
You got to think of some question. Any question at all.
Okay. If you had to pick one pyramid scheme to get involved in, I know you would not, but if someone was holding a gun to your head, which one would it be?
Probably Pampered Chef, just because I could get a discount on kitchen stuff, maybe. And with the discount, I guess, I'm assuming they get discounts. I don't know how Pampered Chef work, but if I could, then most things on Pampered Chef I can find on Amazon cheaper. But with the discount, maybe that their representatives or whatever gets, maybe I could get the same thing. And I cook a lot. I like to cook. I like to bake. So I guess that's what I would go with. How about you?
Pure romance. Because if I'm selling something, it's going to be sex toys.
That's a better answer because everybody likes sex.
I know.
Yeah.
Everyone loves sex and everybody loves vibrators. Well, not everybody, but half the world loves vibrators.
I like sex better than I like cooking and baking. So yeah, that was a good answer, Tim.
I know. And I just thought of it on the spot because I didn't prep.
Well, I think it worked out.
No, pure romance would definitely be the party that I would do. Just because they're also fun. Like, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever been to any MLM party except for pure romance or one of the other various sex toy parties. Yeah. And they're always so much fun. Even if you don't buy anything, they're just fun. You get to pass around vibrators. Okay, Kelly, are you ready for today's episode?
I am. What are we talking about?
We are doing a 4-episode Halloween October theme. And this year's, I say year because we're going to still be doing this next year. This year's October theme is horror movies based off of true stories. This week, we are peeling back the layers of one of the most infamous haunted houses of all time, the Amityville Horror House. You've seen the movies, you've heard the stories, but what really happened inside that unassuming house on Ocean Avenue? Beyond the chills and thrills of the movie, there's a real story rooted in tragedy, controversy, and a whole lot of mystery. So grab your sage and settle in because things are about to get spooky.
I don't have any sage.
I have sage. I can send you some. It won't get there by the time we're recording this episode, considering we're recording it now, but
I was going to say, I don't think it's going to help.
You can sage it when you listen to the episode. I don't know. I'm at my aunt's house. I don't have any sage either. I have some at home, but not here.
I guess we're both screwed then.
We're both screwed. But at least if I'm leaving haunted, evil things, it's not at my house.
That's a good point. You just leave them there with your aunt and then you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. Not my house, not my problem. That's what I say.
Perfect.
Okay. I have some facts for you.
Okay.
So the first fact I have is the original movie, which was released in 1979, The Amityville Horror, became a box office success and it grossed over $80 million. The film claimed to be based on true events, which fueled its popularity. The Amityville Horror has spawned a franchise of over 20 films, including sequels, prequels, and remakes. The 2005 remake starring Ryan Reynolds reintroduced the story to the new generation. Now, I have never seen the original movie. Have you, Kelly?
I have. I have seen both of the movies.
Okay. I've never seen the original. I've only saw the one starring Ryan Reynolds. And at the time, I don't think Ryan Reynolds was as popular. I didn't really know who he was. And I was shocked when I went back to rewatch the movie before we did this episode and saw fucking Ryan Reynolds standing there as the dad. I'm like, what? Ryan?
I did the same thing. I saw it in 2000. Was it 5 you said when it came out?
Yes.
And then just a couple years ago, I went to watch it again. I was like, hey, man, that's Ryan Reynolds.
That's Ryan Reynolds. I love Ryan Reynolds.
Yep.
Did not place him for the crazy dad in Amityville Horror. Another fact, belief in haunted houses is widespread. There was a 2019 YouGov survey that revealed the percentage of Americans that believed in ghosts. What do you think that percentage is, Kelly?
I don't think it's fair because I was reading along with you.
You bitch.
I didn't mean to. I just looked over at the script and saw it. So I'm going to say 45%.
What a great guess, Kelly.
Wow, I'm amazing.
Right on the nose. Many saying they have heard unexplained noises, experienced cold spots, and had just strange occurrences that they've attributed in their homes to paranormal activity.
I am one of those 45%.
I am also one of those 45% that believe in ghosts.
Yep.
Are you? I think you probably are if you're listening.
Yeah, unless you're hate listening. You're like, these people are so dumb.
That's fine. You can hate listen all you want.
Yeah.
We still get the numbers.
Right.
Bring it on. Hate listen every day. On repeat.
Please.
And the last fact I have for you is a lot of paranormal investigators and skeptics have often attributed haunted house experiences to a lot of different environmental factors, such as infrasound, which are low-frequency sound waves that can cause feeling of unease or dread, carbon monoxide poisoning, which can cause hallucinations, or just psychological factors and the power of suggestion.
And I think all of those are very, very valid. I will say, if it was carbon monoxide poisoning, we would be dead because we lived there for 15 years.
Agreed. But I do think these factors explain a lot of the reasoning for people's haunted experiences, but not all of them.
Correct.
You ready to get into our actual story?
I cannot wait.
Perfect. Our story begins on November 13th, 1974, in the quiet town of Amityville, Long Island, in a house that looks almost identical to the one from the movie. Ronald J. DeFeo Jr., only 23 years old, did the unthinkable. He took, now I know nothing about guns, so I have no idea if I'm saying this right, but a .35 Marlin rifle?
Sure.
Is that correct? 35 millimeter? I don't know.
I know nothing about guns, so.
Nothing. Me neither. Well, anyway, he took a rifle. Doesn't really matter what kind. And he brutally murdered his entire family as they slept in their beds.
Nice.
I know, right? His parents, Ronald Sr. and Luis, along with his 4 siblings, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John, were all found shot to death in their beds. This horrifying crime shocked the nation and left a permanent scar on the town. But the story doesn't end there, as we know if you've seen the movie. Just over a year later, the house was sold at a drastically reduced price, $80,000 to be exact, to the Lutz family, which is an insanely reduced price. We're going to get into a little bit later how big this house is. And again, if you've seen the movies.
Anytime somebody's like, look at this big, huge, great house, it's only $80,000. You have to know you're getting ghosts and demons and the underworld and.
Yeah. Someone was murdered there, or someone died there, or something awful happened there if you're getting a really nice house for a drastically reduced price.
Correct.
Always ask your questions, which actually the Lutz family did. We'll talk about that. Before we get into what happened with the Lutz family, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about the DeFeos and their murders.
Okay.
At approximately 6:30 p.m., on November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo entered Henry's Bar in Amityville, Long Island, New York, in a state of distress. He urgently sought assistance, exclaiming, "You have to help me! I think my mother and father have been shot!" And that's exactly how he said it, with that same inflection. I was there. No, I'm kidding.
I just like I think. I mean, I pointed a rifle at them and I pulled the trigger and the bullet entered their body. But I think they've been shot.
Well, at this point, he wasn't admitting to the murders. So,
yeah.
Following his plea, DeFeo, accompanied by a small group of individuals, proceeded to 112 Ocean Avenue, which was located nearby. Within the house, they tragically discovered DeFeo's deceased parents. Now, and maybe things were different back in 1974. I don't know. I wasn't alive.
I was a couple months old at the time, so I'm sure I can be the expert.
I'm sure. Even if I lived in a small town, I just don't think I would follow someone back to a place where they said that they believe people had been shot.
I think back in 1974, people generally thought better about other people than we do now.
Right. But even if it was someone I know, like I have heard way too many horror stories and I listen to way too much true crime that I'm not going anywhere near a place where there could possibly be a murdered body.
Right. But there weren't true crime podcasts back then.
I guess.
People would hitchhike. My father used to hitchhike from Florida to Maryland when he was in the Navy. It was very common. People trusted other people a lot more.
Yeah. And then you had someone like Ted Bundy who murdered people.
Right. Why did so many people get in his car? Because people trusted people more back then.
I don't know. I don't know if today's better to be alive or not, because I don't trust anybody. Probably a lot safer.
I think the pendulum swung way too far to the other side and it needs to settle back down in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. Because even if now, and I know there was a time that this may have been different, and if you want to hear the full story on that, go join our Patreon and you'll get that episode of a time I did something kind of like that with Kelly.
True.
Where there was a something that could have happened and I came to the scene. Now that you have to know. So go join our Patreon to hear that story.
You want to hear the rest of that story.
You do. But even now, Kelly, if I lived near you and you came to me and said, someone's been shot in my house, I'd be like, call the fucking cops. I don't know if I would go back to your house with you, Kelly.
Well, you wouldn't be the first call that I made. I would call the cops first.
Good. That's good.
And then I would say they're on the way.
Okay. And then I'd be like, I will wait outside with you until the cops get here because I will comfort you as my friend. But I'm not going in there because God forbid a dead skin cell or a piece of hair, like I shed like a crazy person with my hair, fell off. And then suddenly I'm a suspect for murder.
It's all part of my master plan.
It is. Yeah. You heard it here first. DeFeo's friend, Joe Yeswit, promptly called the Amityville Police Department, as he should have prior to even entering the house.
Correct.
But he didn't. He entered the house first. Upon their arrival and search of the residence, the authorities uncovered the horrifying truth that 6 members have been found dead in their beds.
You wonder why the people at the bar that he ran into didn't call the police.
Right. Anybody, the bartender who I'm sure didn't leave, you feel like someone else would have called first. But no, they went into the house, saw the parents dead in their bed, and said, now I think I'll call the police. Different times. The victim included Ronald's parents, Ronald DeFeo Sr., Luis DeFeo, who were both 43 years old, as well as his 4 siblings, 18-year-old Dawn, 13-year-old Allison, 12-year-old Mark, and 9-year-old John. All of the victims had been shot with a .35, again, whatever the hell that means, caliber level action Marlin 336C rifle. That's a lot of words for a gun.
That's a lot of detail, man. Dude took a gun and killed his family. That's what I need to know.
That's all I need to know. I can see rifle because a rifle, handgun, they're different. But I don't need the rest of the shit. And they were found to be shot with this rifle around 3 a.m. that day. So they were shot at 3 a.m. and Ronald did not go to the bar until 6:30 p.m.
Well, that's interesting.
Which means decomp was already starting.
It's November. It's cold out.
That's true in New York.
Might not have been quite as stanky as it would have been had it been 100 degrees outside.
That's true. But they were inside a house. They had heat in 1974, right?
Well, my parents did used to start a bonfire in the middle of the living room.
You weren't still like having a stove that you used? Did you have to put wood in to get your heat back in 1974? Yes.
Sometimes Dad would come home from work and have to change his loincloth as we all shared a dinosaur leg bone.
The chilling details reveal that the children met their tragic fate with single shots, while the parents endured 2 shots each. Heartbreakingly, the physical evidence indicates that both Luis DeFeo and her daughter Allison were awake at the time that their lives were ruthlessly taken. Suffolk County Police discovered all the victims lying face down in their beds. The DeFeo family had occupied 112 Ocean Avenue since purchasing the house in 1965. The 6 victims were later buried in St. Charles Cemetery nearby in Farmingdale.
Wow. Why? So he even turned their bodies upside down.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Well, I don't want to spoil it if anyone hasn't watched the movie, but Ronald DeFeo Jr. is the murderer.
No.
He was. Sorry. Assume if you're listening to this episode, you have watched the movie.
Yeah.
Just a little bit about the DeFeo family. Ronald Joseph DeFeo Sr. was also known as Big Ronnie, and he was born on November 16th, 1930. To parents Rocco and Antoinette DeFeo. When he was younger, Big Ronnie was slender and handsome, with suave looks, and he was able to attract the attention of Miss Louise Marie Brigante after a very brief courtship, because that's what you have in the 1930s. Well, I guess by this time he would have been later probably wasn't getting married when he was 1.
Like 1932.
Actually, it was in the 50s.
Oh, the 50s.
Yeah, that's what I meant. And this was in the 50s. After a brief courtship, Big Ronnie and Louise got married. Louise's parents disapproved of Big Ronnie because it's in the 50s. So of course they do. And they cut all ties with the newlyweds until September 26, 1951, when Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr., also known as Butch, which is what we're going to refer to him probably throughout the rest of this episode, was born.
Of course. See, the grandparents, they didn't approve, so they cut off contact with the kid. And then the kid's like, why doesn't my parent think that I'm worth having a relationship with? And then the grandchild is born, and they're like, oh, we want to have a relationship with our grandchild. So let's come back around.
Yeah, pretty much. We'll find out in a little bit why maybe they didn't approve so much of Big Ronnie.
You know, I cannot approve of my daughter's choice of a husband, but I would not stop talking to my daughter over it.
That's fair. Growing up, Butch DeFeo had it hard because Butch was the firstborn and his father expected more from him. And Big Ronnie was not afraid to discipline Butch in questionable ways. One minute, he would hug his son. The next minute, he would throw him across the room.
Some good parenting.
So Big Ronnie, great guy. Great guy.
Yeah.
And we'll learn a little bit more about him later, too, as to how great he really was. The DeFeos went on to have 4 more children. Dawn Teresa DeFeo, who was born in 1956, Allison Louise DeFeo, 1961, Mark Gregory DeFeo, 1962, and John Matthew DeFeo, 1965. All pretty close together in age.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Butch was born in 51, so there was a good gap. So he was significantly older than most of his siblings.
Yeah.
By the time they had their last child, they had moved from their Brooklyn apartment to the Long Island South Shore community of Amityville. Some people were a little curious about how Big Ronnie could afford such an extravagant home, as he was only a car dealer service manager. But it was believed that his father-in-law, who previously did not like him, helped pay for the house.
Okay.
Give the guy 4 grandkids. I'll pay for the house. Now we're going to go into a little bit more about Butch and a little bit more detail about the actual murders. Butch was the eldest child in the family. After the murders, he was taken to the local police station for his own protection after suggesting to the police officers at the scene of the crime that the killings had been carried out by a mob hitman named Louis Fellini. After being interviewed, which, by the way, I just have to say, that's a great cover story, especially back in the 70s in New York. Yeah. It was a mob hitman. I mean, what can I say?
What if it was? What if it really was? And poor Butch is just innocent. That'd be messed up.
Hold, please. After being interviewed at the station, significant inconsistencies emerged in his initial versions of the event. By the following day, Butch confessed to carrying out the killings himself. It was revealed that the alleged hitman, Fellini, had an alibi, proving that he was out of state at the time of the murders.
Sure he did.
Butch admitted to detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." And that was a quote directly from Butch.
That's like, they're not Pringles. It's like,
once you pop, you can't stop.
You can't just eat one, just one. Yeah.
I don't think that's what Pringles was talking about there, but
I don't think so.
not quite. He disclosed that after the killings, he took a bath. That always fascinates me when I listen to true crime cases, how they can do just like the most normal things after taking someone's life.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm going to take a nice soak in the tub.
I just killed my entire family. I'm going to take a bath. Not even a shower. Shower I can get, because shower, like, you might have had some blood splatter on you, but a bath? To me, a bath is relaxing. I light some candles.
If you were in the home while this hitman killed your family, it makes sense that you would have blood on you.
That's true. I guess blood splatter analysis probably wasn't that great back then, that they could tell which angle it was coming from. But I would imagine that Butch was trying to say that he wasn't in the home.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
He didn't report it. This happened at 3 a.m.
True. Until hours later.
Like many hours later. So I would imagine his story was that he came home and found them like this. But anyway, he was saying all of this after he admitted to the killings. So he said he killed them, he took a bath, changed his clothes, and provided detailed information on where he disposed of the crucial evidence, including his blood-stained clothes, the rifle, and the cartridges before heading to work as usual.
What a dumb story, by the way. I came home at 6:30 in the morning, and I found my parents and my
PM.
Oh, PM. I came home at 6:30 p.m. and found.
Kelly, I don't know what you think about bars, but bars are probably not open at 6:30 a.m. Remember, he went to a bar.
I guess that's a good point. Anyway, what a dumb story. I came home at 6:30 p.m. and found my parents and my 4 siblings shot and killed in their bed. So instead of picking up the phone in the house and calling 911 or running to the neighbor's house and banging on the door and yelling at them to call 911, he goes to the bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dumb story.
Not that smart. The motive behind Butch's crimes had remained a subject of speculation as his accounts evolved over time. Initially, he claimed to have heard voices, like ghosts telling him to do it.
Right.
But later, he actually implicated other family members that told him to do it. Many have attempted to understand his reasons. Was Butch driven by the desire for his father's life insurance money? Did he suffer a psychotic break? Did his history of drug use contribute to his actions? Or was it something supernatural and unexplainable? The story of how a man could kill his entire family without any of them hearing it and getting out of bed and fighting back really stuck with people. Butch's trial began on October 14th, 1975, which really quick when you think about it, because you think nowadays people will sit in prison or jail for a long time before they actually get a trial.
They probably didn't have as many criminals back then.
Yeah, probably. He and his defense lawyer, William Weber, which remember that name, it comes back later, presented an affirmative defense of insanity. Butch claimed that he had no memory of killing his family. The insanity plea was supported by the defense psychiatrist, Daniel Schwartz. The prosecution psychiatrist, Dr. Harold Zolan, maintained that despite Butch's drug use and antisocial personality disorder, he was aware of his actions during the crime.
I like that he told the detectives that, like, it happened so fast. Once I started, I couldn't stop, but then says he has no recollection of it.
His story changed a lot. The trial's judge, Thomas Stark, declared that Butch's crimes were the most heinous murders committed in Suffolk County since its founding. On November 21st, 1975, Butch was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. On December 4th, 1975, Judge Stark sentenced Butch to 6 sentences of 25 years to life.
Oh, wow.
So he wasn't getting out. Butch was incarcerated at the Sullivan Correctional Facility located in the towns of Fallsburg, New York, until his death. Despite his efforts, all of his appeals and parole requests were denied. On March 12th, 2021, at the Albany Medical Center, Butch passed away at the age of 69. The official cause of his death has not been disclosed to the public.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. Do you want to hear about the Lutz family, Kelly?
I do.
A year after the trial, George and Kathy Lutz bought the house cheap, as we talked about before, fully aware of the home's grisly history. And they moved in with Kathy's 3 young children.
Okay.
Now, I could not actually find anything that specifically said this, but I'm going to assume it's similar to the movie where Kathy had a previous husband, had 3 kids, husband passed away, married George. Could not find it. I looked for it. There wasn't a lot of information about that. So I'm just going to assume the movie was accurate.
I would buy a house if a family was slaughtered in it.
For that cheap.
Yeah.
I kind of think it probably went down pretty similar to what it did in the movie. They see the house. They're like, this is great. And then George goes up to the real estate person and said, okay, what's the catch? And then she's like, well, let me just tell you. 6 people were brutally murdered in their beds as they slept.
I'd be like,
but,
what are the chances of that happening again?
Yeah. I mean,
with housing prices, the way that they
especially
are now,
nowadays,
you have to know you're getting ghosts and demons for a house that cheap. You have to go into it knowing that. But I mean, it's worth it, I think. I think it might be worth the risk.
Yeah, I agree. They were fully aware of the house's grisly history.
Yep.
The couple had the house blessed by a priest named Father Ralph Picario. He claimed he heard a mysterious, deep voice telling him to leave. He also said that he was slapped by an unseen force, and later, blisters formed on his hands.
I just like the visual of just somebody being bitch slapped by something unseen.
Being bitch slapped by a demon. Get out of here.
It just made me giggle. I'm sorry.
When the Lutz moved in, they claimed that the traditional haunted house phenomena began to occur. They reported experiencing strange smells, cold spots, and even green slime oozing from the walls.
Ugh.
Yeah. If that's not enough to make you pack your bags, Kelly, because that might be for me, George claimed to have seen a pig-like creature staring at him from the window with glowing red eyes.
Just a little piggy.
A pig-like creature.
Well, that's true.
They didn't say pig.
Did it have
pig-like?
Skin-like?
It did probably have skin-like things.
Yeah,
maybe it was a chupacabra.
Oh my God, it was a chupacabra. We found it.
Now it's a pig.
Now it's a pig. It makes perfect sense.
That's what it was. The chupacabra was haunting the Amityville house. Case closed. Yep. We can stop now. Thanks for listening. No. Kathy and her sons, Daniel and Christopher, were also have said to have levitated off their beds on multiple occasions. There we go with the beds and levitating again.
I don't get it. What is it with evil that wants you to levitate over your bed?
I mean, I would love to levitate if it was me doing it. Like, who doesn't want to just be able to, I'm floating? But not if a demon's making me do it.
Yeah, I think I'd skip the demon part too.
George, who had a history of dabbling in the occult, which I did not know, and I could not find anything that was specific as to what he dabbled in. I mean, maybe he just did tarot readings. I don't know. Who knows? But he dabbled in the occult. Claimed that he would wake up at almost 3:15 a.m. every night, which was the same time that the murders happened. The thing I hate the most, with the exception of demons getting you in the bed or the shower, is when a horror movie puts a fucking timestamp on something. Because then the second you wake up at that time in the middle of the night, you think it's the demons from the horror movie coming to get you.
I watched a movie called The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And in that movie, I think it was like 3:33 a.m. A lot of demonic stuff would happen. And I must have woken up that month like 3 times at 3:33 a.m.
Yeah.
And the terror that you feel when you see that time.
Yes, it is a real thing. It's happening. They're coming to get me. The Lutz family experience lasted only 28 days. They fled the house, leaving behind most of their belongings, and their story quickly became a sensation.
This is why when people say that this was a hoax and this and that, 28 days, you bought a house and you lasted 28 days and then you fled and left everything you owned behind. I'm sorry, there's more to it than
There's something
There's
to
something
it.
going on. Yeah.
I agree. But then a part of me doesn't, and we'll get into it.
Okay.
Investigators looked into their claims. However, the paranormal events they reported could never be proven. Many people believe the family fabricated the story for financial gain, as a popular book was written based on their accounts. Before speaking with the author of the eventual book, George Lutz had connected with William Weber, the lawyer from the previous owner of the house, so Butch's lawyer, who was trying to have a book written about his client. So before George connected with the author of the person who wrote the book on Amityville Horror, he connected with the lawyer of Butch, DeFeo, who was also trying to have a book written about Butch and the crimes he committed. A little interesting. Weber told ABC that Lutz had been intoxicated when recounting the events and accused him of creating ideas. When asked if he believed Lutz, Weber said, quote, "Absolutely not, because they were making a commercial venture," end quote. The Lutzes reportedly made $300,000 from the book that was written, which, again, they only invested $80,000, if you remember. This has led many claims that the haunting was a hoax for financial gain. Some reports suggest that the priest never even visited the home, while others claim that the police were never called, despite the book stating otherwise. So I guess at some point they called the police for the hauntings issues, and some said the police weren't called, but the book said they were.
Why would you call the police for a haunting?
I mean, it's 1974. What else are you going to do?
I mean, Ed and Lorraine Warren were around. I think I'd start with them.
Don't worry. Don't worry. They come into play in a little bit. It is worth noting that no other family who has lived in the home since, and the family that currently lives there, has reported experiencing anything supernatural. In 2013, one of Lutz's children, Daniel Lutz, provided his own account in a documentary called My Amityville Horror, in which he claimed the horror was real. The documentary director, Eric Walter, told Newsday, "I'm not a believer in what happened, but I'm not an outright skeptic. I believe something happened to these people, but we don't know what it was."
So he is a skeptic.
He said he's not an outright skeptic.
He's not cynical, is what he's not.
Yeah,
but he
exactly.
is a skeptic.
Something happened, but he doesn't know what.
Right.
Do you want to learn a little bit more about the actual house, Kelly?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the house was built in 1927, originally 112 Ocean Avenue. The 3-story waterfront home has 5 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms and a basement. Now it is listed to having 4 bathrooms, so I just want to state that, but originally it was listed as 3.5.
3.5 bathrooms in 1974. That's some rich people shit right there.
Right. And they bought this house in 1975 for $80,000.
Yeah.
The house was 3,600 square feet, and the home has been owned by 5 different families since the murders. The infamous house attracted the attention of numerous paranormal investigators, including the well-known couple Ed and Lorraine Warren, famous for their involvements in cases like The Conjuring and Annabelle. Although most visitors didn't notice anything unusual, there was a photo claiming to show a ghost of one of the murdered DeFeo children. However, many people believe that it was most likely a team member or a hoax.
I've seen that photo, and it looks like a small child. It's not just the face. You can see his torso. It looks like he's wearing I think it was a striped sweater, 1974-ish, 75-ish clothing, going back to, and there's no way it was a team member.
I did read that someone claimed that the photo looked a lot like one of the team members' children, which makes me think more of a hoax.
I mean, that's possible, but I don't know why you would bring your child to an investigation like that.
To hoax a photo?
So you think they intentionally did it, not like they accidentally caught a picture of this kid?
Yes. That is what I read in one of the articles.
Have you seen the photo?
I have.
What do you think about it?
I mean, it's creepy, but it does. I mean, it's also, this was probably taken. I don't know when it was. It didn't really say what year it was taken. So it's hard to tell like how much technology was in play. So I don't know.
I thought it was creepy. Something about the eyes that just made it not okay.
Yeah.
But old cameras.
Lorraine Warren mentioned in a 2005 CNN interview that she didn't see anything, but could feel a presence, describing the events at the house as the personification of evil. How evil can manifest itself and be attracted in certain situations. Now, Kelly, you might be wondering, what happened to the house itself?
Yes.
Well, the infamous 112 Ocean Avenue still stands to this day, but it has been through quite a few changes.
I've read that they've changed the windows up top that kind of look like eyes.
Yeah, I have a picture of, I believe one I have from this year, and then one back from when I think the DeFeos lived there.
Okay.
So you can see kind of the comparison that I'll post on social media.
Okay.
The address was even changed to 108 Ocean Avenue to deter the curious tourists who still flock to see the so-called horror house. The website, which we have talked about in the past, diedinhouse.com, if you don't remember, it is a site that allows users to search for addresses to find out if there have been any deaths or murders or suicides at that location. The database reports there were 7 deaths at the infamous Amityville Horror House. The first death occurred in 1939 when a man passed away due to an illness. And 35 years later, 6 members of the DeFeo family were tragically killed in the Long Island home, as we know. So only 1 additional death to the house.
Right.
7. That's not an awful number, right?
I mean, it was built in the 1920s. I think the problem is that 6 of them happened at the same time.
Yeah, I think that'll do it.
Yeah.
However, the listing agent, O'Neill, stated none of the homeowners reported any haunting experiences. In fact, according to the Zillow blog Porchlight, 4 owners had lived in the house since the murders, and I guess at the time of this article, and none of them reported any strange occurrences or ran out of the house screaming after only 28 days.
Huh.
Which I just think is a stark contrast, because to me, it's like the house was so bad that it got an entire family to leave the house and all of their belongings after only 28 days of living there. And then all of a sudden, nothing else ever happened in that house.
I wonder if sometimes it's not more like a person that is bringing the whatever it is rather than the house itself
into it. That is also a possibility.
With the Lutz family, there was the connection that, what was his name?
George
also had an occult connection, like experiences.
That's true.
So it could have just been like this murder that happened. And then because George had a background with the occult, that somehow it brought those tortured souls up.
That's a very good point. Jim and Barbara Cromartie purchased the house from the Lutzes for $55,000 in April of 1977.
This house just kept going down in price.
Kept going down. Little did they know that their peaceful abode would soon be the subject of a published book. So they didn't have hauntings, but they still didn't have a great time in this place.
Right.
By November, the Cromartie family found themselves inundated with unwanted visitors due to the book's publicity. The constant stream of curious onlookers prompted the family to change the house's address. As we said, it changed from 112 to 108. Despite this effort, the flow of visitors continued unabated, with people showing up at all hours of the day. In an interview with Newsday the following year, the Cromarties opened up about the extent of the hardships they were facing. They described how the constant influx of visitors during the late hours of the night had severely disrupted their sleep patterns, leaving them with minimal rest. Once, a man stood on the front lawn playing a bugle at 3 a.m.
Jesus.
On another occasion, someone left human excrement on the porch.
Why would they do that to this family? They have nothing to do with any of this.
I don't know. During the holidays, the family's decorations were stolen.
Get it together, human beings. Come on, this is ridiculous.
The home's reputation as a horror house even followed 14-year-old Joyce Cromartie to school, where classmates harassed her and repeatedly asked if she had seen any ghosts since moving in. However, the Cromarties said they hadn't experienced anything paranormal there. In December of 1978, the family was overwhelmed by the constant stream of visitors, so they decided to move out and put the house on the market for $100,000. By the time the movie, The Amityville Horror, starring James Brolin and Margaret Kidder, was released in July of 1979, the Cromarties had not found any serious buyers. The renewed interest sparked by the movies was impacting the entire community. Ocean Avenue was covered in empty beer bottles, popcorn boxes, and other trash left behind by onlookers who showed disrespect to every house and homeowner on the street.
Popcorn boxes? What the hell? They're bringing popcorn? They think they're going to watch
and
the
beer,
house? And it's going to come
watch
alive?
the house. Maybe.
That's insane.
Probably had lawn chairs and just were sitting out there drinking some beer, eating some popcorn, watching a house.
All right.
Isn't that what you do every Saturday night, Kelly?
I tend to get a little bit wilder than that. I will eat popcorn laying in bed watching something on TV and then fall asleep.
Okay, very wild.
Yes.
As the crowds got larger, extra police details were hired and paid overtime, which was a costly expense for a small village like Amityville. Although public officials had considered ways to make money from the crowds, such as running bus tours or charging admission to see the house, none of these ideas were approved out of the respect for the DeFeo family. The Cromarties gave up on selling the house and eventually moved back in. They fought to defend the home's reputation and accepted speaking engagements in the New York area to share the true story of the house. In February 1982, they reached a settlement with the publishing company to remove the subtitle, A True Story, from all future printings of the book.
Too late.
Too late. Damage is done.
Yeah.
When the Cromarties finally sold the house in August 1987, things had become significantly quieter. However, there was a new interest each time the movie played on TV. Longtime Amityville residents Peter and Janine O'Neill purchased the home for $325,000 and replaced the famous eye windows with square ones. In June of 1997, after living there for 10 years, the O'Neills sold the house to Brian Wilson for $310,000. So they lived there for 10 years and took a hit.
Yep.
During the 13 years he owned the house, Wilson renovated the boathouse and added a second sunroom to the back side of the house. He sold it in September 2010 to Caroline and David D'Antonio for $950,000.
He made a profit off of that one.
He did make a profit. He bought it for $310 and sold it for $950.
Yep.
The D'Antonios lived there for 6 years before putting the house on the market with an asking price of $850. When it sold in March 2017, it went for $605,000.
Wow, this house, the price just wildly
insane. Interestingly, as I had said before, not a single owner since the Lutzes have reported experiencing any paranormal activity in the home.
Well,
and I was gonna stop there, Kelly, in my research. But then I found this article that made me dig a little deeper.
Ooh.
In 2002, Rick Osuna published a book titled The Night the DeFeos Died, Reinvestigating the Amityville Murders, which examines the irregularities surrounding the case, the obstacles the defense team faced in assessing evidence that had not been submitted, and the authorities' haste to arrest a suspect before obtaining a coherent version of the events. Osuna had long advocated for the case to be reopened. His objective was not to exonerate Butch DeFeo, who did confess to the crime, but rather to establish his actual involvement in the killing of his family. So Osuna believed that something else went down besides the story that was told earlier. There has been doubt surrounding DeFeo's guilt since his arrest because authorities believed the crime could not have been committed by a single person.
Yeah, it does. The fact that they were all still in their beds.
Yeah. None of them woke up and heard and tried to stop him.
Yeah.
This conclusion is distressing to Osuna, who emphasized that Dawn was desperate to leave her parents' home and may have been willing to do anything to escape. Osuna supports his theory with evidence such as an affidavit signed by Dawn's boyfriend in 1974 and a song written by Dawn. And in case you forgot, Dawn is the eldest sister. She was 18 at the time of the murders.
She died, though.
She did. Yes, Osuna explains that.
Okay.
And there was a song written by Dawn called The Night the DeFeos Died, in which she allegedly fantasized about her family's murder. The second part of Osuna's book reveals the intricacies of the DeFeos family's life upon moving to 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville in 1965. The author uncovered a domestic nightmare characterized by the abusive nature of Big Ronnie, who subjected his wife and children to violence. Following a violent argument in which Big Ronnie attacked his wife and several of his children, leaving the youngest child, a 9-year-old, with a bloodied face, Dawn, in an attempt to defend herself, used a knife, convinced that their father would kill them all if they did not act first. Dawn then persuaded her older brother, Butch, to kill Big Ronnie during the night. She also suggested the same fate for her mother, Louise, who, despite also being a victim of his abuse, was seen by Dawn as beyond hope, as she had always been unconditionally on Big Ronnie's side. What they disagreed on, and by they I mean Butch and Dawn, was what to do about the younger siblings. Butch instructed Dawn to watch their bedrooms while he, according to Osuna's version of the events, his friend Bobby Kaleski, do away with Ronald and Louise. Dawn argues that they can't leave any witnesses and it would be a crime for the younger children to grow up with such trauma. So she decides to kill them too. Butch, horrified by what happens, takes matters with Dawn into his own hands and becomes the sole surviving DeFeo.
That's pretty messed up.
Yeah, it is. But it makes kind of sense.
Yeah.
As to people believing that there were two people that did it. But again, this is all speculation.
Right.
Just reporting what I've researched. The majority of Osuna's book provides a plethora of documentation and data that, at the very least, raises doubt about the thoroughness of the trial and handling of the evidence. For instance, the crime scene photos in the book show bloodstains in areas that don't align with the official story of the DeFeo family being killed in their beds, which supports Osuna's interpretation of the events. Osuna also emphasizes
it.
Osuna also emphasizes the discovery of a bullet with a different caliber than the Marlin rifle, which was .35 caliber.
That's right.
If we're saying that right, because I'm a gun person, that Butch discarded after the massacre in the bedroom. Osuna argues that the confession from Butch, an alcoholic and heroin addict, claiming to be the only perpetrator, was obtained through torture. I mean, Kelly, when have police officers ever used torture to interrogate someone and get a false confession out of them?
I don't believe it's ever happened, Jen.
I don't think there is any history of that happening ever.
That would be against the law. They're cops. They wouldn't break the law.
Exactly.
Right.
They would never use force or torture or unlawful ways to gain a false confession.
Never.
I also just have to put a side note in there for people who do not have a sarcasm filter. That was sarcasm.
Yes, it was.
A revealing indicator of the level of police brutality during that time in the Suffolk County is the extremely high confession rate during interrogations. Okay, I'm going to give you some percentages here, Kelly. Confession rates in the Bronx were 35% during interrogations.
Okay.
In Kings County, Brooklyn, they were 20%. In Suffolk County, during interrogations, the confession rate was 95%.
Well, there's nothing suspicious there, Jen.
Nothing at all. They're just really good investigators.
They're trained investigators.
They are. They are great at interrogating and catching all the right criminals.
All the right criminals, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The 5% is just the people that actually weren't guilty.
Right.
Yeah.
Most people are guilty of crimes.
The different judges participating in the trial process dismissed all evidence supporting this claim. So I guess it was brought up and they were like, nah, that doesn't happen. Police don't use force or torture. The prosecutor and the police acknowledged on multiple occasions that the nature of the crime strongly suggested the involvement of 3 individuals, even though only one was tried and convicted. Weird. A separate investigation conducted by retired police detective Herman Race corroborated this assessment. Despite this, the case garnered significant attention from the media and the personal and political agendas of those within the law enforcement sphere led to a push for a rapid resolution, even if it entailed presenting conflicting official accounts of the events. According to Osuna, Butch DeFeo's lawyer, William Weber, who was struggling to access evidence for his client, came up with the plan to create a fake demonic haunting at the house in Amityville, partnered with the Lutz's family, who were the next occupants of the house, as well as the priest and the famous demonologist couple, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Together, they aimed to use the haunting story to help Butch DeFeo's case during his trial. The Lutz's family later described their supposed supernatural experiences in the best-selling novel we talked about earlier, The Amityville Horror. This plan also involved a seance during which the photo of the demonic boy was captured, resembling one of the that's where I read it. I knew I read it somewhere. Resembling one of the photographer's own children. After an extensive investigation during which Osana says he was the subject of several anonymous threats, Osana, a former fan of the Amityville mystery, admits that he's been unable to watch any of the slew of movies or documentaries about the supposedly haunted house. Quote, "Before learning the truth, I thought the earlier ones were entertaining, but now I don't like them." End quote. The book and the movie of the Amityville Horror capitalized on a genuine tragedy, the murders of the DeFeo family, and seduced the imagination of the public, who unfortunately don't care how they are entertained. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, there is no denying that the Amityville Horror has left an indelible mark on pop culture. And while the movies have certainly amplified the legends, the true story behind the Amityville Horror continues to fascinate and frighten people to this day. Okay, Kelly, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think that it's interesting, all the information that he had about, especially that the sister wrote a song called what was it? The Day the DeFeos Die, or
The night the DeFeos died. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would explain why nobody got up out of their beds.
Yeah. It was very interesting. Again, I was almost done. Like, I thought I was done researching, and then I came across that article.
I think it also explains why he said, once I got started, it happened so fast. Like, he was trying to tell the police, like, oh, I did it really quickly.
Yeah. And again, it probably, he didn't kill his 2 younger siblings, but he killed Dawn, according to that account.
Which I can get, because if you're like, hey, I'll kill them because he's an abusive asshole and she's letting it happen. Not that in any way, shape, or form are we saying that Luis deserved to die for being in an abusive relationship, because we know how all that works. And it is not her fault, because abusive people suck and make people think it's their fault. If Big Ronnie was actually abusive, I'm not saying he deserved to die, but, maybe shot in the leg.
I can see where children could feel desperate and that they don't have a lot of options to get out. Not that it's right, but I can see how somebody younger without a full functioning brain might make really terrible decisions.
Yeah. And that brings us to the end of this episode about the infamous Amityville Horror House. From the tragic DeFeo family murders to the Lutz's family's chilling tales of paranormal terror, this house has become a symbol of fear and intrigue, inspiring books, films, and countless ghost stories. While many still debate whether the hauntings were real or simply fabricated, one thing is certain. The legend of the Amityville Horror continues to haunt the imaginations of people around the world.
If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. Your support helps us reach more listeners and share even more spooky stories.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at notmyghostpodcast and on Facebook at notmyGhost, Not My Problem, where we post episode photos. So the photos we talked about today, we're going to post them there. We also post contest updates and other fun stuff that y'all can join in on.
If you want even more ghostly content, consider joining our Patreon. We have some fantastic exclusive perks for our supporters.
Yes.
As we were talking earlier about how Jen rushed to a crime scene-like situation.
Crime scene-like. That's a great way to put it, Kelly.
Yeah. And if you've ever had a spine-tingling paranormal encounter, share your story with us at notmyghostpodcast@gmail.com. And you just might hear it featured on a future episode.
At this point in time, I will probably say you absolutely will hear it featured on a future episode, because nobody's emailing us their ghost stories.
That's very true. Yes.
Yeah. We have a couple and we don't have enough to do a whole episode on. So please email us, because our inbox is lonely.
It's very lonely. It's so sad.
It's so lonely. Send us your stories, please. We want to skip a week where we don't have to research and can just read your stories.
Right.
Please. Thank you for joining us on this eerie exploration of the Amityville Horror House. Remember, as you drive through the quaint town of Amityville, New York, keep this in mind.
If it's not your ghost,
it's not your problem.
Until next time, stay spooky
and stay skeptical.